Welcome back to the Next Level You podcast, where we help you build the bridge between your now and your next. I am your host, Myria Johnson.
And I'm Dr. Miriam Johnson, your co-host, co-visionary, and partner in these conversations about growth, alignment, and becoming.
The letter for this episode is F. F is for fear. Not the obvious kind, and not the dramatic kind. We're talking about the quiet fear, the fear that shows up as hesitation, overthinking, delay, or staying in situations longer than we should.
Fear often hides behind logic. It disguises itself as being realistic, responsible, or cautious, but underneath, it is still fear.
Fear of starting, fear of not fitting in, fear of losing, fear of the unknown, fear of becoming obsolete, fear of never becoming what you believed you were meant to be. One of the most significant sources of fear we're seeing right now is technology-related fear, specifically fear of AI. People are asking real questions. Will my job still exist? Will my skills still matter? Will I be replaced? Will I be left behind?
And this fear is understandable. We are living through one of the fastest periods of change many of us have ever experienced. Roles are shifting. Expectations are evolving. Sometimes the rules feel unclear.
There is a helpful framework that puts this fear into perspective, called the Fear Learning Growth Zones model. Most of us are familiar with the concept of the comfort zone. That's where things feel predictable and familiar. But growth does not happen there. When change shows up, like AI, many people move into the fear zone. This is where anxiety, self-doubt, and resistance appear. People start to question their relevance or avoid the change altogether.
But the fear zone is not a stop sign, it's a signal. There is also important research in change management that helps explain why fear shows up so consistently during change. According to research from ProSci, resistance to change is not random or irrational. It's a normal response to perceived personal impact.
ProSci explains that people often resist change because of concerns about losing control, increased workload, uncertainty about what comes next, or whether they will be able to succeed in the new way of working. These concerns are not about attitude. They are about how change is experienced personally.
This is why telling people to just be flexible or positive rarely works. Resistance is not something to eliminate. It's information that helps us understand what clarity, communication, or support may be missing.
If you stay with it long enough, fear can move you into the learning zone. This is where curiosity replaces panic. You start asking, what can I learn? How can I adapt? And how can I use this tool instead of fearing it? From there comes the growth zone. This is where skills expand, confidence increases, and new opportunities emerge. The very thing that once felt threatening becomes something you can navigate with intention.
So the fear around AI does not mean you're behind. It often means that you're standing at the edge of learning.
There is another layer of this fear that does not get talked about enough, and that's guilt. Some people feel uncomfortable using AI tools because they worry it means they're not doing real work. Others worry it means they are cutting corners. Some fear that relying on AI will make their own skills less valuable or visible. This is not laziness. This is not lack of integrity. This is identity fear. People are being told to be innovative and efficient while also worrying about how their work will be judged. Fear shows up as hesitation, secrecy, or avoidance.
But AI does not remove your value. It shifts where your value lives: judgment, critical thinking, ethics, creativity, context, decision making. Those are still human responsibilities.
Fear tells people to avoid the tool altogether. Growth invites people to learn how to use it responsibly, transparently, and intentionally. And here is the reality check fear often tries to avoid. Organizations are not treating AI as optional. Many companies are already investing heavily and building long-term strategies around it. This matters because fear often tells people, if I ignore this, it will pass. But learning happens while things are still unclear. Waiting until change feels safe often means waiting too long.
The question is not whether AI is coming, it's how you choose to respond: with avoidance or learning, with fear or curiosity, with resistance or growth.
Fear wants certainty before action. Growth builds clarity through action. AI is a tool, not a verdict. Fear may show up, but it does not get to decide your relevance. This is where we want to connect fear back to something we discussed earlier in the series. Fear is not just a thought, it's a nervous system response. Before you consciously decide how to feel, your body has already started reacting.
This idea goes back to the work of Harvard physiologist Walter Cannon, who studied how the body responds to perceived threats. He identified what we commonly call the fight or flight response. Cannon explained that when the brain senses danger, the nervous system immediately activates survival mechanisms. Stress hormones like adrenaline are released. The heart rate increases. Breathing changes. Muscles tense. The body prepares to protect itself.
What is important here is timing. The body reacts first, and the thinking brain comes second. That is why fear can feel sudden, overwhelming, or hard to control. Over time, psychologists and trauma researchers expanded Cannon's work to include additional responses we now recognize as freeze and fawn.
When fear shows up, your body may default to one of these patterns. Fight can look like defensiveness, control, irritability, or pushing harder than necessary. Flight can look like avoidance, distraction, overworking, quitting too quickly, or staying busy to escape discomfort. Freeze can look like procrastination, indecision, numbness, or feeling stuck mentally and emotionally. Fawn can look like people-pleasing, over-accommodating, minimizing your needs, or silencing yourself to keep the peace.
These responses are not personality flaws. They are protective strategies your nervous system learned to keep you safe. Your body is trying to reduce the threat, even if the threat is emotional, social, or imagined, rather than physical.
The challenge is the nervous system does not constantly update itself automatically. It can react to modern stressors such as job uncertainty, AI, relationships, or life transitions as if they were life-threatening.
When fear shows up, Your body may default to one of these patterns, and managing these responses does not mean suppressing them or judging them. It means working with your body instead of against it. Fight response. Managing fight looks like creating space before reacting. It looks like slowing your breathing, lowering your voice, and choosing curiosity over control. It may mean stepping away from a conversation and returning once your body feels calmer. It's learning to respond without needing to win or prove something in the moment. Flight response. Managing flight looks like staying present instead of escaping. It looks like breaking tasks into smaller steps rather than avoiding them entirely. It may mean setting gentle boundaries around distraction and giving yourself a safe structure to return to the task. It is choosing one small step forward instead of disappearing.
Freeze response. Managing freeze looks like reducing pressure and reintroducing movement. It looks like starting with something simple, such as standing up, stretching, or changing environments. It may mean asking for clarity instead of expecting yourself to know what to do next. It's giving your nervous system permission to move slowly without shutting down completely. Fawn response. Managing fawn looks like reconnecting with your own needs. It looks like pausing before saying yes and checking in with yourself first. It may mean practicing honesty but kind communication, even when it feels uncomfortable. It's learning that safety does not require self-abandonment.
Managing fear does not mean eliminating it. It means regulating your body so fear does not make decisions for you. When you understand your default response, you can meet yourself with compassion and choose alignment over autopilot. That is why awareness matters. Protection is not the same as direction. When you understand your default response, you can slow the moment down. You can regulate your body before making decisions. You can choose a response instead of reacting on autopilot. Fear may activate the system, but self-awareness gives you back your choice. We want to be honest with you. Starting Next Level You came with fear. Fear of visibility. Fear of uncertainty. Fear of whether this would actually work.
Even now, fear still shows up sometimes. It's the fear that asks, what if this never becomes what you hoped? What if the return does not match the effort?
Building something of your own removes the safety net. It takes you out of the comfort zone you are used to. There's no guarantee. And fear loves uncertainty. But fear did not mean stop. It meant this mattered to us. It meant we were stretching into something aligned, not something comfortable. Because after all, we've resonated with something we already knew, which is that in order to grow, you have to move beyond your comfort zone. And this is an important distinction. Fear does not always mean stop. Sometimes fear is simply the cost of alignment. When something matters, fear often shows up alongside it.
What matters is not whether fear is present, but who is leading. When fear leads, people shrink, delay, or abandon what they care about. When alignment leads, fear becomes something you carry, not something you obey.
This is true whether you are starting a business, changing careers, raising your hand in class, or saying yes to something that stretches you. Fear does not mean you are on the wrong path. Often, it means you are stepping onto a meaningful one.
But here is where fear can quietly shift. Once you step into something aligned, fear does not disappear. It changes shape. It moves from fear of starting to fear of losing what you have built. Fear also shows up when we are afraid of losing something: a job, a relationship, a sense of stability, a version of life that once felt safe.
This fear can make people cling. It can make them tolerate misalignment. It can make them want to revert to something that they know did not work in the past. It can make them silence themselves to preserve what is already shifting. Sometimes fear is not warning you about loss. It's preparing you for transition. Fear of loss often convinces people that holding on is the responsible choice, that endurance equals strength, that stability, even when it costs your peace, is better than uncertainty. But fear does not always tell the truth about what is sustainable.
There are moments when holding on is not courage, it's survival. And survival mode can quietly become a long-term way of living if we are not aware of it. Fear of losing what you have can keep you negotiating with misalignment, convincing yourself to wait a little longer, to give a little more, to ask for less.
There are also seasons when letting go is not failure, it's alignment. Transition does not always mean something is falling apart. Sometimes it means something is reorganizing. A role, a relationship, a season of life. Fear shows up because the nervous system senses change, not because you are doing something wrong, but because something is shifting. Learning to listen to fear without obeying it allows you to move through transition with intention instead of panic.
Fear often tells you that failure will define you, but failure is not an identity, it's information. Time magazine has explored how fear of failure persists even among successful leaders, not because they doubt their ability, but because failure is often tied to reputation, credibility, and how they are perceived by others.
Similarly, Forbes has written about how fear of failure at work is shaped by today's environment. Layoffs, constant evaluation, and high visibility make mistakes feel costly, even when people are capable and committed.
Some of the moments we have experienced and once labeled as failure were actually redirection. Some were protection. Some were in preparation. Fear shows you the pain. Growth shows you the lesson.
Fear wants to rush meaning. It wants to tell you immediately what something says about you, who you are, what you are capable of, whether you should keep going. But meaning is not something fear gets to assign in the moment. Some experiences only make sense later, after you have had time to breathe, after you have had space to reflect, after you have lived a little more life beyond the moment itself.
Fear asks, what if this ruined everything? Growth asks, what if this is shaping you? Shaping your discernment, your resilience, your clarity, your sense of self. Failure doesn't cancel your progress. It often clarifies it.
When fear no longer controls the narrative, mistakes become feedback instead of verdicts. Discomfort becomes data instead of danger. And setbacks become part of your education rather than proof that you do not belong. Fear may remember the moment, but growth integrates the meaning. And when you allow yourself that integration, fear loses its authority. Let's close with our next check-in. Notice, where is fear showing up in your body and your behavior? Evaluate, which response do you tend to default to? fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Did you try to manage the outcome? Experiment. Choose one small action that supports regulation and forward motion. Track. What shifts when you respond with awareness instead of reaction? This is how fear becomes information instead of instruction. Fear can speak, but it does not get to lead.
Thank you for sitting with us in a conversation that acknowledges fear without letting it take control. And remember, fear has two meanings: forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. The choice is yours. Zig Ziglar.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe to the Next Level You podcast on platforms such as YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or Amazon Music. Check our show notes for details. And if you want to dive deeper into the concepts we covered in this episode, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn by searching Next Level You. That's NEXTLEVEL and the letter U. Look for our bridge logo, and we'll see you soon.